The room is relationships. The room is you and me and everyone in America.
What are you talking about?
The room is different cookie cutter from Hollywood.
Yeah, man, you never know. People are very strange these days.
What's going on?
Welcome to The Room Minute.
The podcast where we get obsessed with the cinematic classic The Room.
1 minute at a time.
You have no idea what kind of trouble you're in here, do you?
Why are you so hysterical?
We always wanted people actually talk about it.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Allison.
Oh, hi, Rob.
We're here today to talk about minute 9, in which the sex ends and Lisa is not happy.
It's like it ends. It finally ends.
Oh, hi, Niall.
But not for long.
Oh, hi, Niall.
Oh, hi, Allison.
Oh, and oh, hi, listeners. We haven't been saying hi to the listeners. It's so sad. They probably just left.
Oh, well, they just like to listen to you guys, so.
All those Denny's out there. So this minute starts with some close-up kissing, more thrusting, yay. I actually put that in my notes, yay. Then there's thrusting from the side, because, you need extra angles. And second 17, Johnny's energy is spent. The music fades. We track in close and abruptly change angles for some reason, as things get kind of awkward. Johnny seems to be falling asleep, but Lisa has stuff to do, like turning out all the lights.
Yeah, at that point where you realize, I guess, what time did he conceivably get home at? 5 p.m., 6 p.m.?
He does apparently work across town.
It was bright out. It was full-blown daytime when he got home.
Still, it's San Francisco, and we've seen that he takes the cable car in, minute 1. So, he shouldn't have been that late.
It just seems like, unless he was there just before dusk, they must have been at this all damn night.
Well, all those camera setups take time.
You think that, what we're actually seeing here is footage from Johnny's actual sex tape, that he has cameras set around the bed.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, I know Danny likes to watch, but sometimes he's not here. So I recorded for him.
That's why we see the hair going up and down. That's why we see her playing with the tie 2 different times. It's because he put his suit back on. They started over.
He's like, oh, imagine, that tie thing in my hair so hot. I'll put the entire suit back on to do that all over again.
And finally, she looks at him a little upset, makes a little scoffing noise, and then actually lays down with him anyway.
No. He does not look at a comfortable angle.
No.
When he's sleeping.
It's like he's falling asleep and trying to pull her over at the same time. It's a weird angle.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one who thought that it was weird. I was thinking he almost looks more dead than asleep.
I'll go to notes from a midnight screening right now, because that's the good one from this movie. Notes from a midnight screening. It's one of you like, fuck, you killed him.
This could be a survivor of his, maybe Johnny is vampire idea, where he was actually, he actually is dead. After we fade, his arms actually go up into that Dracula thing where he puts the palms of his hands on his shoulders.
I have this song stuck in my head.
Maybe if you get you could tweet Nick Jonas. Do you remember when that guy got Weezer to cover Africa? He just put out a campaign of I want Weezer to cover Africa, and it kind of caught fire on Twitter. And then Weezer went and recorded a cover of Toto's Africa for the guy. You could do it. You could go to Nick Jonas and be like, I want you to do a cover of this I Will song from The Room.
And make it good.
Just to see, maybe you'll go for it.
All of my usernames when I was little were Mrs. Nick Jonas and and Mrs. Sidney Crosby.
Don't open with that when you message him.
I if you tweet him from that, Mrs. Nick Jonas, he'd be like, oh, there's the old ball and chain on me to go do something again.
Yeah, so I was really into the Jonas Brothers. We'll just leave it at that.
I think that was like, I think I was in my mid-20s when the Jonas Brothers were a thing. I only really knew about them from like South Park spoofing them. So I was at that point in my life, I was like, oh, I've finally got like a massive point of disconnect from the youth. Cause they're all into stuff that I'm not into and stuff.
Once you start thinking of them as the youth, yes, you are old.
Yeah. It's like I used to be into stuff, but now the stuff that I'm into isn't in anymore.
I know, I'm going through that right now.
That's what you get. I always thought, it would never happen, but there is a point, like, in the current charts and stuff, the music charts, I couldn't tell you a single song that's out at the minute. I'm so disconnected from everything. I'm just like, yeah, that's for the young people. I'm off listening to my old songs that came out 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like oldies.
What are oldies?
Like 60s and 70s music.
Okay. I was wondering what was oldies now.
Like, oh yeah, like the oldies, like the Strokes.
Cause like, LA still has KLOS, which is technically a classic rock station, but they'll play like 80s songs now and even 90s songs. I'm like, that's weird.
That's like one of the stations I always watch when I'm back home seeing my dad. We used to watch a music station called Vintage TV that used to show, like, back in the day, used to be, they would put on like the Everly Brothers. Nice. Or like Led Zeppelin would have been the latest you got. And now they're like, we're playing songs from 1998. It's like Vintage TV is playing songs from 1998. Jesus.
Which makes sense, but we need new labels. It's like extra class. Like comic books have like the Silver Age and the Golden Age. Mm. We need music to have that. Because classic just keeps getting bigger.
Yeah. You're just at that real point where you're feeling for, like Tony Stark when Peter's going to him like, have you ever seen this really old movie, The Empire Strikes Back? Just like, what?
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, my mom was in control of the radio station during all the car trips, and she would play K-Earth 101. I don't know if you know what that is, Rob, if you listen to it.
Easy listening, right? I do.
No, I have no idea what that is.
I know K-Earth.
Yeah. It's a LA station.
LA.
And it plays like the 60s and the 70s music, and so I got like really into that.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of stopped paying attention to current music when I left high school, which was in 2012. So that's about the point where I stopped paying attention. I mean, some songs have like snuck through that I know, but basically I stopped paying attention to like charts and stuff.
Oh yeah, you do get those ones that'll chip away where you're like,
oh yeah,
Uptown Funk is such a big song that even I have heard of it. Where I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I've heard that around somewhere.
Anyway.
Music, okay. This has been your radio podcast.
But yeah, within the minute, it's like, they're going at it, and then they're not going at it. Johnny's dead.
Yeah, it dies. Johnny's dead.
Yeah, he dies. And he's like a very aggressive dead person too. Like he won't let go of her. He's like aggressively dead.
Yeah, until she finally goes over and lays on him, and just his arm stays there.
Oh yeah, there's the abrupt cut as well, where he has his arm up at one point, and it cuts to the next shot, and it's straight back down. Which is just one of those like editing things of like, nah, nobody cared. Just nobody cared.
So, I had categories left over from the last minute that I didn't get to. And there's a lot of things. Although you never finished, Allison, the 15 weirdest scenes. I think we stopped you at like the second or first.
Oh, it wasn't 15.
Oh, what was it? 10?
I have, let me see.
50?
No, it's not 50. It was mainly the bronze, and then it was blue is the warmest color.
Okay.
And then Team America, which is worth mentioning because at one point there is a number 2 done on someone's face.
That's one of the things that got cut for the ratings board. So in the theater you didn't see that part. Speaking of Team America, that's on my unique list here. Anomalisa from a few years ago was also involved puppets, but it was a much more realistic sex scene with like awkwardness and tentative intimacy and stuff. And really good. Since we're on my unique list, we also got the Lawnmower Man, in which people have sex in virtual reality and their bodies twist together, and then he consumes her because that's how he gets to be more powerful.
It is. I think that is one of the least erotic sex scenes ever, too. Like, it's just such a. It's a trip to watch. that whole movie is just so messed up in so many levels. It's just so, again, because it's so aggressively aged now as well. that it just comes across as very unpleasant the entire way through.
Well, yeah, at the time, their virtual reality was awesome. And that's one of those things that immediately feels old.
Yeah. It's only it's one of those crazy things too. I guess maybe it's discerning talent, because the Lawnmower Man is 92 or thereabouts, isn't it? And then 93 is Jurassic Park. It's just the leap of I guess maybe it's a budgetary thing.
Yeah, partly.
And the fact Jurassic Park's not using as much CGI. But the fact that one of a year apart, these two movies, and one of them just looks like the most dated thing that ever existed, and the other one still looks pretty
works.
Good.
Yeah.
Also on Unique, we have Crash, the car crash one, not the racism one.
Yeah.
Which I think we came up a couple minutes ago with our guest Sean German as well. If you don't know that one, it's people who reenact famous car crashes and then have sex in the wreckage.
That was a massively...
Which is not the weirdest part.
That was a massively, massively controversial movie. That when in the UK, I think they wanted to ban it and everything.
Huh?
Considering it was the 90s, you think at that point they would have been we're kind of okay with this stuff now. Nowadays, you're getting out a Serbian movie lands or Serbian film.
A Serbian film, yeah.
And they're just kind of
That's on a different category of mine. It's coming up.
But yeah, that kind of gets a pass of being oh well, so what? But back in the 90s, there was still a real pearl clutching we can't have this up on our screens.
Well, the good thing is most of the people who would have been horrified by that film wouldn't make it to the worst scene in the film, or the best, depending on how you enjoy it, that involves using an open, fresh wound in a leg.
Yeah.
Instead of a proper, natural orifice. So, I assume they would have turned the movie off by then.
Yeah. It's just got any kind of Cronenberg sex scene could probably be put on the unique list.
Oh yeah.
Although, I guess weirdly, The Fly is the one that's the closest to just being normal. Because it's he's having a lot of sex, but there's nothing weird about it just yet.
Right.
But everything else is you just get bits of Existenz and stuff that are just weirdly erotic. But it's just people rubbing pulsating masses of flesh in their hands and stuff like that. Of course, then he did was it A Dangerous Method that had it wasn't a Freud biopic, but it was it's been a long time since I've seen it actually. So that was one of those ones that's almost like Alice's Mae West thing, where I was going to go into a half thought of I don't know if I can conclude this with a point. So I'm going oh crap.
Well, that movie happened.
I did kind of have a point. I heard, but I don't know if it's true, that Mae West helped contribute to the rating system.
The MPAA one.
Yeah, because she was very scandalous for the time. But yeah, it wasn't a complete thought. Also, I googled crash sex and a bunch of weird stuff comes up. And then somehow I got to a website called sex.com.
Somehow.
Yeah.
That must have been one of the first ones though, if you got that domain. We're oh my god, I got sex.com. You think that would be one of the first ones to go?
Someone bought that as soon as .coms were available.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty much what you would think.
Or someone just paid a lot to get it.
But they have footage from Crash up on it, which is kind of that's what's... It's you come to sex.com, we'll show you clips from Crash, movie from 1996.
Yeah, there's this really weird picture.
What else is on Unique? Oh, we already talked about Blue is the Warmest Color. Blue Valentine is a notable one because they had a fight with the MPAA, actually, because of the implication of oral sex, a man on a woman, which doesn't normally happen in mainstream films. And Ryan Gosling himself went and actually, I don't know if he went physically to an office, but he fought with the MPAA over it and thought it was a double standard. That they would change the rating because of that.
Yeah. That reminds me of, remember all the fuss that came out about the brown bunny?
Yeah.
Way back, that was the whole thing. Because that is literally Chloe Sevigny giving Vincent Gallo a blowjob on film. There's nothing simulated about it.
No.
I think that's still a hot topic. That's, a lot of people still have that real sort of tetchiness about that movie. Mostly because it's a bad movie. But
well, yeah, in retrospect, it's more worth talking about because it's they were dating at the time and he's making this movie that's not going to get a big audience anyway, and then they do that more to get attention than because it was necessary in the film.
Yeah.
And it's just putting too much into it for...
Yeah. So it's Vincent Gallo, not to go on a tangent, but he just seems to be one of the most unlikable people to ever exist. And yet I know people who absolutely adore him. Like, they think he's just the greatest thing to ever be given to filmmaking. I can't understand why.
I couldn't tell you what it was about now, but I loved at the time his movie Buffalo 66. So like when he was making something else, I want to see it.
I think Buffalo 66 I think that's the only one I remember being like a kind of success. Because everything else is just like, he's just an underground guy.
Yeah.
But I remember reading interviews with him where he'd say like, oh yeah, I'm a painter as well, but I can't show you my paintings because they're not for the public. They're too good. Like, he'd come out with things like that. Like, yeah, they're just, no, people don't deserve to see my paintings and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh, so you're an asshole. I get it. All right. But at least like in that one, you know, in the Brown Bunny that it's outright, this is an actual thing you're watching. Yeah. Whereas I remember, I think it's still controversial with Don't Look Now, the sex scene between Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie.
Right.
It seems as if it's real.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people are still kind of convinced.
When he said later it was.
Yeah, so I guess that's a kind of, when you watch it right enough, it does seem like it's kind of weirdly not glamorous. So that kind of almost makes it seem like, oh, this is a real sex scene here, because there's nothing dressy about it. It just seems like this is two people flat out having sex on screen.
But that was a big deal with Angel Heart in the late 80s with Mickey Rourke and Lisa Bonet. Especially because she at the time was on the Cosby Show. It was like, you know, nice family sitcom, and then she does this explicit sex scene in a movie.
If only that was the only scandal to be associated with the,
right.
the Cosby Show.
Exactly. Back when the Cosby Show was a nice reference. Drifting from unique sex scenes, we have sex scenes that end in death. Friday the 13th Part 2, which actually takes its cue from a moment in the Bible, I believe, where two people get a spear through them while they're having sex. Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, that's the 9th Friday the 13th film, one-upped that by having I guess it's a metal fence post, put through someone and then ripped upward during the scene. Niall, you already mentioned a Serbian film in passing, but there is a scene in that movie where a woman has her head cut off during, and remarkably good special effects, actually, for a film that obviously was never going to get a big audience. Species. I think every sex scene in that movie ends in death, because that's just what the alien does. And what's the other one? A lot of horror films on this list. Cabin Fever, skin coming off during, not a very pleasant scene. Certainly memorable. And then just a couple years ago, Gone Girl.
Oh yeah, that's right, yeah.
She, spoilers, she kills Neil Patrick Harris while they're having sex.
That was another one I watched with my dad, which was... Yeah, that was another unfortunate, like, oh crap, I shouldn't have put this on when my dad was here kind of thing. Because not only that, it's everything around that whole, like, final act of the movie is just like, oh god, I shouldn't be watching this with him. This is too much. I'll add to that list as well of, I think it was the first episode of American Gods as well, has a very memorable sex scene that ends with death.
Yes.
Where someone is literally consumed by a woman's vagina.
Mm-hmm. She did that a few times in the early episodes. Now she's actually got scenes where she talks to people.
Yeah. Moving up in the world.
Well, she's one of the older gods, so she's got a very primitive way of taking power from her worshippers. Yeah. I'm not gonna go into, I have a list of bad ones, but I want to save those for when we get to the later scenes.
For the arguably, worse sex scenes than this one.
Yeah. I was skipping around my list, so now I've lost it. Serves plot, but is excessive. Oh, Basic Instinct and Body of Evidence, yeah. A lot of sex when they didn't need it.
That was a real thing in like the early 90s, where most adult thrillers, and that this is a thing made for adults to watch, they always had a sexual element as well. Yeah. Even when they just didn't need to have them. They were just like, yeah, you make it a bit steamy as well.
Which is fine. Like in Basic Instinct, there are scenes in that definitely serve the plot, but there are also ones that are just there
just there to titillate.
Exactly.
Basically. You can get things like Single White Female as well, where it's just like this constant vibe of like, this could turn into like a weird porno at any minute, this movie. Like, it just seems to have this vibe about it. Like, God knows what it is. Like, it seems like this is, it could tip either way at any point in this thing.
What you were just saying though reminded me of Mulholland Drive.
Oh yeah.
Cause it's got a really good scene that people remember, but it's sort of comes out of nowhere. That's not what the movie's about. That was on my serves the plot and pretty hot list. Along with Terminator, Ghost, Secretary, Lost and Delirious, and Queen of the Damned.
Oh. I will, you might get John on down the line, like my Batman co-host at some point, but I do know that the Terminator sex scene is like, he thinks he's told me many times that he thinks that's like the most romantic moment in any movie ever and stuff.
Well, it is a great example of how you can do relatively explicit scene and make it serve the plot and make sense, because it advances their relationship, even as it's, in a normal movie, it's like the relationship gets to that point and it's done. The fact that they're opening up to each other that night they spend together is important, because that's the entire point, especially when we get to the end.
I don't want to kind of like belittle the scene or anything, because like it's a perfectly fine scene, but it's just because he gets so passionate about it. And he has a whole thing like, oh yeah, you got like the beautiful piano rendition of the theme and stuff. Yeah. And it just makes me laugh, because I'm just like, oh my god, it's so cheesy as well though.
And you get the close up of the hands grasping each other and with the sheet wrinkled and everything. Not that I remember that scene from many, many times as a kid.
Although I guess we'd be remiss as well talking about Jim Cameron's sex scenes. We didn't mention the Titanic sex scene as well. Like arguably one of the most iconic of them.
Certainly recently, yeah. It's one everyone remembers, because everyone saw that movie.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I remember that being, in school when, it'd be like the last day of term, so they allowed you to bring in a video. And I do remember being in a classroom, and like the teacher had been very like, wait, oh my god, I forgot that this happens. Cause I think at that point we were about like 11 or 12 years old. But at the same time, everyone had seen Titanic already, so it's like, oh, what's the harm? Like, come on, we all know what it is. No one cares. We all saw it already.
Yeah, and that's not the most scarring part of the movie for an 11 or 12-year-old.
Is it the guy's toupee is the scarring part?
No.
What is it?
Like the ship going down. It's pretty...
Oh.
Pretty gnarly.
Yeah. Yeah,
as we're recording this, the Titanic would have been on her maiden voyage. Fun fact, 107 years ago. She sinks in 2 days.
Oh, man. Get out your violins, people, to do, play some songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cue Titanic music.
Nearer my God to thee. Anyway.
Don't play that during the sex scene, though.
That's the thing, too, because I remember, because I grew up actually down, like a couple of miles down the road from Belfast where the Titanic was built. I still always think it's very strange. Most of it must have been just capitalizing on the movie. But Belfast is still, as a city, insanely proud that they built the Titanic. They really kind of boast about it. It's like, we built that ship! It's like, the unsinkable ship that sank. Yeah, that's like, I don't know if it's a thing you want to be affiliated with. I guess it's not your fault they rammed into a friggin' iceberg, but.
Although one of its sister ships that I think was also built there also sank, so.
But they've got this real thing.
One of them survived.
You can come up and see the Titanic Museum and see the dockyards and all this stuff. I was like, oh, okay.
If it keeps tourists coming to Belfast, good for them.
Yeah. I mean, that's the excuse for keeping the royal family around these days, but, an increasing amount of people going, that's not gonna cut it anymore after a couple of years' time.
I like that phrasing, like, you're keeping them around. Not that you're keeping them as the royal family, but like, we're gonna put them down as soon as tourists stop caring. They will be dead. You heard it here, folks. Niall McGowan wants the royal family to die.
It's the Irish guy living in England talking about getting rid of the royal family. But there's a real vibe over here at the minute where it's like, that's the only defense of maintaining the royal family as a thing. It's like, the massive tourism. But it's like, but people don't get to come in and meet them. You can still have the palace there, but why is all the taxpayers' money going to maintain these monarchs that have no power? Like, they're just fancy people put up on a pedestal for no goddamn reason. But, oh well, let's not get into that.
There's an American princess.
I do know that, the people obviously do love, Meghan and Harry and stuff, and that's doing a lot for some people. So, I guess if you must, then by all means keep them around, but,
the British citizens pay for it so the rest of the world can enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's them making up for the whole British Empire thing.
Gotta do something, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think we want to have to pay for all the security so that Trump can go to Mar-a-Lago every other weekend? But we do it. so you guys can enjoy him, so.
That's the thing. Again, that's just like with any taxes though as well, because we have over here, you guys don't have, but the BBC has the TV license over here.
Right.
Where you have to pay every other week to basically own a TV. And it's just like, why? I've already bought the TV. It's like, no, it's to get the BBC, because the BBC is publicly funded, so you have to pay for that. It's like, well, what if I don't watch the BBC? No, you gotta pay for it anyway. It's just, if you own a television, then you have to pay for this thing. I was like, well, what if I don't ever want to watch the BBC? It doesn't matter. You still gotta pay for it. And it's, I think now they've even expanded out, even if you own a computer, you have to pay the TV license.
Because you can't access it.
So it's a massive pain in the ass, but that's the thing that they will, some people dodge around it, but they live in fear. Because you never know when that TV license guy is going to show up.
That's funny, I didn't know that.
But the rest of the world also enjoys your BBC shows, so it works out for us.
The thing is, I do watch the BBC, but I'll be sitting watching like Doctor Who, and you're just kind of like, there's only ever like 1 or 2 good episodes a season, but I still tune in every year, and I'm still paying for this show. Yeah. You're like, well,
the good ones are really good, and you're paying for it. Yeah.
That's the thing. That show has kept going for so long. Of like, yeah, most of it's just, but when it hits, it's like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So if they could although you do get like Fleabag and stuff now, is raising the standard of the BBC a little bit. So, but then they'll do a thing where it's like, oh yeah, we had 1 season and 6 episodes of that. And then 3 years later, you might get another one. But, fingers crossed, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, in the US, we could use more TV shows like that don't try to just fill 24 episode seasons.
2 of my favorite themes are the royal family and Doctor Who. Anyone who knows me really well knows that those are 2 of my favorite things.
This entire episode has just been a personal attack on Allison.
Basically.
We haven't actually talked about the minute in a while. Is there anything else in your notes for this minute itself?
The only thing I remember is, when I first watched it, thinking briefly that Juliette Daniels had some kind of sores on her back, or like a weird freckles or something. With
the rose petals, yeah.
But every time, it still kind of throws you, where you're like, what the? Oh yeah, sorry.
She does also famously have some other things on her back, but they had been covered by makeup because Tommy was disgusted that she had acne.
That's why he's got his head like that as well. He's like, get me away from that damn.
I have one last note.
Notes from a midnight screening.
It's a note from a midnight screening because I love this one because the thing it's talking about doesn't happen yet. There's several times in the screening where people will interact with stuff that hasn't happened, like setting it up. Someone will be like, what time do you set your alarm as it gets dark? Because the joke is that everyone knows exactly what time you set your alarm, which we'll get to next minute. We've already talked about several bad movies, did you have a specific one you wanted to promote this week, Niall? Other than Howard the Duck, which we talked about a lot on Monday.
I know it. It all sounds like some bad movie.
Bad movie of the week.
I am a big like bad movie fan. Like I've gone through like a lot of the classics and stuff, like, you know, obviously Samurai Cop, which we did briefly talk about, like Troll 2 and things like that, like all the heavy hitters. One I did rewatch recently that I thought like this doesn't get enough attention is the Stephen King movie Sleepwalkers. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that.
Yeah,
but it's just such an oddity of a film. Like it's from that early to mid 90s era of like when they were just making Stephen King everything, which we're kind of getting back to now. Like it's the world's kind of gone in a cyclical thing of like, oh yeah, we love Stephen King again. And I do love the guy's books. Like I'm a big Stephen King fan, but like him as a person should never be allowed near a film set, because films based on his books that he has nothing to do with are usually pretty good, but anything he's directly involved in will undoubtedly turn out to be atrocious.
Well, yeah, he wrote Sleepwalkers directly for a screenplay.
And it is terrible. But
I haven't watched it in many years, but in retrospect, I love Sleepwalkers, so I want to go watch it again and see how it
I do love it in, like, it's a ridiculous film, but like, I don't know, Allison, if you have any real awareness of it, but it's basically, it's like a vampire movie, but the vampires in it are also kind of half cat people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, the main...
Who don't like cats.
The main character is played by that guy who played Leo in Charmed way back when. And he's like, when you're introduced to him, you think he's having an affair with this woman, but it turns out that's his mother. And there's actually a memorable sex scene in it where mother and daughter, or mother and son are having sex and stuff. The mother's played by the Borg Queen from, Star Trek First Contact and stuff. And it's one of these things, like, you can't tell, like, what vibe they're going for. It's one of these, like, when the scary things in it happen, they're so ridiculous and so comical that you can't imagine.
Well, yeah, someone gets stabbed with a corn cob.
Yeah, there's a guy getting stabbed with a corn cob. There's a guy who gets a pencil shoved in his ear into his brain, and he gets up and walks around like nothing happened. And it's like, what? And yeah, there's a bit where, like Glenn Shadix, like Otho from Beetlejuice and stuff, like he gets his hand ripped off, and his reaction to it is just gonna like, oh! And then he runs away, and as he's running away from the guy chasing him, he just turns around and he's like, I'm sorry! Like, he's just kind of like this really sassy, like, oh, alright, I'm sorry, okay? And you're just like, what is this thing? And everything about, like, Brian Krause, the main guy, will go from, like, playing it like it's like a Dawson's Creek-esque proper teen drama, where you're like, oh, he's actually pretty good in this. But then when he has to turn into a villain, he goes so over the top that you're just like you're not even too sure who the character is anymore, because he's like literally like playing two different people in it.
Yeah.
And it does have weird, like, the morphing effects on their face seem to be like where they got the vampire transformations in Buffy from, which is a weird one as well.
Yeah, very similar.
And when you actually see them when they're fully transformed, it looks like a rejected Power Rangers villain suit. And they kind of move around in them the same way. So you can never tell when you're watching it. Is like, is this film, are we supposed to be scared of this? Are you supposed to find it funny? What's going on? Like, it's just, and because of that, like, it's just, and it goes to really crazy lengths as well. Like, at the end of it, it's just like, it full on blows out where friggin' Ron Perlman shows up at one point. This friggin' guy's got, like, the houses are blowing up. Like, things are going crazy in this movie. And it's hilarious. But you're also like, what is this though? I don't understand.
And you also get cats attacking people.
Yeah. They get, able to defeat the villain by a bunch of cats scratching this creature until it bursts into flame.
Yeah.
And after that, you're like, alright, I guess that's the end of the movie.
I definitely have to rewatch this now.
Yeah. I do actually know something though. We, one of our guests on season 1 of Batman, an actress, Lauren Ashley Carter, who's been in a couple of great kind of low budget horror movies herself. But she has a genuine, real love of Sleepwalkers.
I thought you were going to say you knew the main actress.
Oh, Imagine Amick. Oh god, I wish.
Imagine Amick, cause that'd be awesome.
But no, I remember her posting one point, like, online, like there's a scene at the beginning where you're introduced to Imagine Amick. Of course, also Allison from the Gilmore Girls. She was, like Christopher's, like, wife when I think they got married, didn't they? Maybe they didn't get married, but they had a daughter together.
Baby mama.
Yeah. And
the one who says that thing about the horse. I'm sorry. Isn't there an expression with a horse?
I'm trying to remember, actually.
There are many expressions about horses. I don't remember the Gilmore Girls.
Remember her sitting on the roof and saying something about a horse. Anyway.
Oh no, that's a different Twin Peaks actress. But that's Sherilyn Fenn, because she has that thing like, oh, that's a horse of a different color and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's from when Jess goes down to find his dad. I think that's that episode. Imagine Amick is she's what do you call, like, Christopher's other daughter is like Cece or something. Like, this a really annoying kid that comes into it at one point. That's her mom, and she's in a couple episodes, I think. It's weird though as well, because Imagine Amick's like actually a great actress, but she just never got anything good after Twin Peaks, and then eventually the Gilmore Girls. But
she did a lot of things though.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, but just
she's been working consistently since the 80s.
Like a lot of stuff, but just none of it really good, unfortunately. Except Sleepwalkers, which is good, but just not in the way you would expect it to be.
Including, since we were talking about sex scenes, her movie she did right after Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me was called Dream Lover, which is very sexual.
But yeah, so I'll recommend that as people are like looking for something. If you're just like me as well, because I have a weird fandom for Stephen King. Like, I'll read anything that guy writes, even though there's a fair percent of it can be absolute dreck. But he's got a kind of comforting presence about him, just in his prose and all this stuff. I never find his stuff scary. I find it more like familiar and just like, oh yeah, actually I just enjoy being in his worlds and stuff. So, if you're in that kind of thing and you want to see a film that's patently ridiculous, I can recommend Sleepwalkers.
Jumping in from editing to say I did watch the film, I think it was a few hours after we recorded, and despite sometimes out of nowhere tonal shifts, the film holds up pretty well. It's certainly worth watching. It takes itself seriously even when it's being ridiculous, which is a good thing in a horror film. I think part of my love for Sleepwalkers, and I do need to watch it again to see how it holds up, is that seeing it the first time in the theater was one of the best nights I ever had, because it was a bunch of people that I didn't usually hang out with, and we had to lie about our age to get into the movie, and it was late, and then we went to a diner and we're out till like 1 or 2 in the morning, and so it was just the whole night is just really good.
Oh.
So maybe it's part of that. It ties together.
It'd be like, much like, Juliet Daniels looking back and be like, oh, this was the movie I bared my breasts for. You'll look back at Sleepwalkers and be like, that's the movie I have such fond memories of.
Yeah, it turns out it's going to be really awful. I'm like, oh no, I ruined it.
Like, just never look back.
Tainted the memory.
Never look back, Robert.
Now, Niall, one last time, how can the listeners hear more of you?
Yeah, you can get more of me, on Bat Minutes. Which is a podcast where we look at the Batman movies, Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher ones, 1 minute at a time. We're nearly at the end of Batman Returns at the minute, and we'll be starting Batman Forever later in the year. And yeah, you can find us on all your good podcatchers and your social medias. And, we're on there on Twitter and friggin' MySpace and Bebo, Grindr, all those things. We're all over the shop. So if you want us, we will come.
So there's nothing wrong when people make fun of the project, in this case, The Room.
The Room Minute is a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find more content at lemmingdrops.com.
Follow The Room Minute on all the obvious social media. If you've got any stupid comments after the show,
you can leave them in your pocket on Facebook. If you like what you hear, throw us a rating and a review on your podcatcher of choice. Thank you for listening, and remember, if a lot of people loved each other, the world would be a better place to live.
Leave us! Cut.